Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Nikita Parekh. I am a global strategic sourcing lead for network infrastructure at Google. Having spent over a decade in the hyperscaler space, I'm here to talk about this fundamental shift that we've seen. It's no longer, Google is no longer, and the cloud is no longer just a commodity. It's like this whole industrialized orchestration that, I'm here to talk about what is the impact in terms of global manufacturing and supply chain excellence that's a part of it. Next slide, please. So before we talk about the scale, let's just simply talk about the cloud. When you think of the cloud, what do you think of? You think of it's something up there in the sky, untouchable, you can't see, you can just see it, but you can't feel it. In fact, that's the misconception. In fact, the cloud is one of the largest infrastructure projects in the history of mankind. I want to just to understand what you mean when you say the cloud, I want to relate it to simple examples that you can relate to for an everyday person. So if you were to talk about the first example, which is the energy impact of the cloud, it's a simple AI data center takes 500 megawatts per campus. And if you were to equate that to a non-engineer, it's just 5 megawatts is just a number. But it's actually the amount of energy you would need to power 400,000 homes in a small city. So imagine when you set up a new DC, you're actually taking mid-sized city grids and putting it onto an energy grid. Like that's the energy impact when you set up a new AI data center. Let's talk about the infrastructure impact in terms of how much are they using in terms of steel, concrete, heavy duty materials. Most hyperscalers today are spending north of 100 billion in CapEx. That's 2 per year. If we were to equate that to spending, it's like building 30 brand new NFL stadiums every single year. That's the kind of impact. So can you imagine the amount of hardware, the amount of infrastructure that is being shipped across the globe to enable this? The third is, if you were to just look at the kind of data that is being put in the cloud on a daily or a monthly basis, and you were to put it in terms of what it would be in terms of physical data, you're adding thousands of petabytes of information to the cloud. If you were to just print out what was put into the cloud on a monthly basis and put it into physical box, that library stack would reach from the earth to the moon and back. That's the kind of information we're looking at in today's world. And if you were to look at the delivery impact of the cloud and the speed at which we're doing this, the turnaround time is about 24 months to 2 years, which is very short compared, and you compare the scale at which this operates, the same time that it would take to operate, let's say, an international airport, the planning, the execution at that scale, it takes about 10 years, and hyperscalers are doing it in 24 months. So that's the kind of impact that the cloud has. Next slide, please. We talk about how big the cloud is, but it's very important to understand how do you scale this? What does scaling mean? So let's start with the basics. People often confuse scaling with growth. That's not what it is. The idea of scaling in this context is you're scaling while growing, but you're doing it efficiently. You should have the ability to scale exponentially. So for hyperscalers, it's not just a technical feature to be able to scale. It is more of a business requirement. You want to be able to scale, like an add capacity without breaking the network, as well as, looking for a ground up redesign. You should be able to add multiple capacity without actually having any manual intervention, right? And like you're looking at it as servers. So you're treating these servers, we're past the stage of treating them like cattle, or like pets, where, you name them, fix them, move them around interchangeably. We're now treating them like cattle, and you're just able to herd them into wherever you need them to go. What is disruptive scaling for a hyperscaler? It means like, if I want to grow 2x, do I need 2x the resources? No, disruptive scaling breaks that. You should be able to scale 1,000%, 2,000% with effectively like a minimal cost of zero. That's what we're looking at in terms of to catch up in this world. Next slide, please. So all of these paradigms worked in the old world prior to, two little words came AI and changed the way it worked. Originally, this was the legacy hyperscaler blueprint is what we've been using, multiple hyperscalers have been using over the last decade, Their first focus was disaggregation. It was extreme disaggregation, We would have separate compute boxes, separate storage. Everything was separate. You basically, instead of making one rack much more powerful, you made individual components. If you needed more capacity and you needed something, you would just add 10,000 nodes. You wouldn't make each thing much more powerful. It was like pizza boxes. You just add number. That's what it was. It was more about horizontal scaling and, lower cost per unit. Second thing, in terms of hardware and server lives, we used to have it for like 5-7 years. You're basically sweating the assets. The software was so good at masking performance and performance gaps that you could actually use this hardware for 5, 6, 7 years, and you would get excellent returns because it was depreciation on the balance sheet. You would have it, you were using it to the max of your abilities, and that meant, a very different game than what we are in currently today. Third, if you thought about like a data center, the outside shell as well as what was inside, we worked on very different upgrade life cycles, right? You had your servers, your machines, which were 5, 6 years, and your outside shell, which was at a 15 to 20-year timeline. There was a completely different thing because your power requirements were completely different. As long as you were in the safe envelope of a power thing, you could actually, use this and have it go for years to come. Fourth, the procurement strategy was more about cost per unit. If I can get something cheaper from somewhere else, we'll just do that just in time. You worked on lean and mean, and that's just how it was more reactive. It just focused on like, you don't hold a lot of buffer stock. You just work on that model. And all of this worked in the last 10 years in the hyperscaler environment. Next slide. However, none of this works in today's environment. So in today's environment, you're more about speed and you're more about efficiency. So the first is, you're looking at it from, the first is silicon to sovereignty stack. When we look at our stacks, we're looking at complete vertigration of the stack. We're looking at it all the way down to like, designing your own silicon TPUs clusters. So basically, you're the architect for these stacks that go into the data center. You can't optimize for performance if you haven't designed for this. So that's been a fundamental shift because for these large language models to work, every minute of latency power plays a crucial role. So it has completely fundamentally changed the way we operate. The second is workload centric. It is now the bus. This one size fits all doesn't work anymore. We need very, very specific software. And basically, the software determines the hardware design. And that's what we're actually working for. You need to have the ability to have these high bandwidth interconnects that talk to each other. Thousands of chips should be talking to each other at the exact same time. And that's why it's completely designed. So we decide how it goes forward. Third is your tech cycles. As I mentioned earlier, they were on completely different tech cycles. Now you're asking these tech cycles that were 5, 6, 7 years and 15 to 20 years to be basically compressed into 18 to 24 months. You need your tech cycle, your hardware cycle, as well as your shell to be upgraded at the exact same time. So how do you do it? You need to be moving at the speed of AI. Innovation needs to be moving. So what we need to be able to hot swap global infrastructure. So how do we do that is one of these is a key element in getting towards success in this case. The last one is, I think if you look at the kind of power requirements earlier, like a single rack was 15 megawatts, and now it's at kilowatts, and now it's at like 100. So basically, we've hit, the physical limits of air. So now you're looking at liquid cooling, you're looking at immersion tanks. So fundamentally looking at different ways to power these things. Parts that were so niche, like these CDUs, are now core technology, that core value add supply chain. We're looking, how do we have them? How do we integrate them? And what is required to be successful in these things? Because ultimately, all of this shows that we're really changing the way hyperscalers are thinking to be able to succeed in this environment. It's all of these solutions are technically out of the box solutions, never tried. Ability to scale and adapt at this level is super important. Next slide. And finally, it comes to, what do you think, to operate in this environment, what do you need in terms of supply chain excellence? Because as I mentioned previously, it's a completely different world out there. Everyone is adapting, The first one is, I think we're looking at a Lego, structure strategy approach where you basically build 80% of the things fabricated inside a factory. So whether you're deploying something in Dublin or you're deploying something in Tokyo, it doesn't matter because all of it is there. In terms of the deployment in the factories, we're also reducing the bill of materials, We have changed how that works. We're trying to keep parts a lot more fungible because then it makes it easier to plug and play and deploy at scale. The second is looking at, traditionally, when you look at like transparency in your supply chain, you go down maybe a level below, one level, maybe 2 levels below. Now we're going right down to the base. So basically, every single commodity, you're building a pyramid and you're going all the way base up, right down to the source. That's a very different way of tracking your entire commodity chain. When you're building a data center with thousands of commodities, imagine the scale at which you have all your sub-tiers. But you're really looking at the supply chain from that angle. When I mean compliance at code, anything that is produced in a factory, compliance, you're basically auditing that component in a factory. You are making sure it is clear before it leaves the factory, global environmental trade, global labor standards, all of it is done. So you're like pre-anticipating that at a factory versus like having issues later on. The biggest constraint, as you all know right now, is power. That is a limited resource. So, now power is an integral part of the supply chain. It is part of it. The electron is part of your supply chain strategy. And so what you're doing is you're securing power capacity 3 to 5 years out so that you're not blocked, because power is the biggest bottleneck in the AI supply chain world. So how do you do that? As far as your old servers, racks, etc. concerned, by using some of those, you're retiring those to be able to use some of those again. Any rare minerals, earth mines from that, to be able to repurpose it within your supply chain. And last and probably the most underrated one is, resiliency. You need to be at a 99.99% thing that any kind of, geopolitical risk, any kind of climate change, you should have a supply chain strategy that kind of insulates you from this, whether it involves multi-regional sourcing, whether it involves a different stocking, buffer stock strategy. You need to be able to have that, because ultimately that's what matters. How resilient are your supply chains for you to be able to scale? All of this is great. But the bottom line is, even though you have these pillars and even though you have this new environment of the AI world, you still need to continue to innovate in terms of technology. This is not going to change because you need to innovate. You will continue to bend the cost curve. That's a given. That's stable states. You need to be able to do that. However, I think based on what we've seen in this last 10-year shift, I think this year and the next 5 years, this is probably the biggest challenge in terms of supply chain overall as an industry, but it's also the greatest opportunity to take supply chain and convert it from a back office function into a very competitive weapon in the world of AI. Thank you.